Hi, this is Joe Chambers. Welcome to Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage. Today's clip is part two of an interview we did with Joe Bonamassa. Joe talks about a lot of things, touches on a lot of personal things, talks about a lot of great things like contacting Eric Clapton and inviting him and Eric accepting the invitation to play with him at the Royal Albert Hall in London, and how terrified that he was. They knew that everything was on the line, and how great it was when it all worked out and changed his whole life. Hope you enjoy it. If you do, be sure to hit like, subscribe, and the notification bell so you don't miss any of our new content. Once again, the great Joe Bonamassa. Welcome back to Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage with great Joe Bonamassa. So, who we just got through talking about you being on tour with B.B. King at the old age of 12, and but did you have formal lessons from anybody? Or, who was didn't you have a mentor? Like, was it
Danny
Danny
Gatton,
Gatton? Yeah.
yeah, he was a mentor of mine. I took a few formal lessons. I never dove into theory. I knew what I wanted to play, and it's not slighting anybody who knows theory. It's one of the regrets of my music life is I don't know more about what's going on, especially when I'm in the studio with like the A team here in Nashville, like Michael Rhodes and
Right.
Reese and Greg Morrow and they're it's the minor six. I don't know. What is it? Is it B flat? Yeah, I don't know. And I've kind of grown to regret not diving into it earlier. I've kind of gotten into it more lately, but I took a few formal lessons. But my strength has always been to listen to something, kind of figure out what's going on there, and just hear it in my mind and play it and interpret it. Not necessarily note for note, but just kind of like, well, why would you be playing up here and not there? It's just you're connecting on an emotional level and on a level that you're like, okay, this is why he used this sound or this person used that sound, why they're using the treble pickup versus the front pickup, and why you go, oh man, that was so cool. And there's a method behind it. You're just not switching pickups and sounds and stuff like that for fun. It's because you have a statement, and everything you want to play, you want to make a statement. If you have a long barred solo, you don't want to just play everything in the first 30 seconds and then have another minute left to rehash those first 30 seconds in a
Right.
way. You want to tell a story where it peaks and doesn't overstate its welcome. So I learned that a lot from watching guys like Paul Kossoff play. Eric Clapton was big, but as far as figuring out who to listen to, Danny Gatton was the biggest for me. That and my father. It was like Danny would sit me down and be like, "Hey kid, you know a little bit about the blues." He goes, "Not a lot, but you know a little bit." He goes, "Are you hip to Hank Garland?" I'm like, "No." You know, "Are you hip to Gene Vincent? Cliff Gallup and do you know who Les Paul is?" And then, of course, as a 12-year-old, like, "Yeah, I have a Les Paul at home."
Yeah.
Like, no.
Yeah. I thought he was just a guitar for years.
Yeah, and he's like, "No." He goes, "Les Paul and Mary Ford." And next thing you know, I mean, just hanging with him as a kid, I was blessed to do that. And hanging with him, my life went from mono to stereo. There's this whole world of stuff out there. Chet, you know, and Merle Travis, and the kind of people that Ry Cooder and those kind of and even he used to he used to tell me, like, people think Roy and I were not friends because I was really good friends with Roy Buchanan, and they played similar instruments, and they had that kind of hybrid bebop, jazz, country, but fiery blues thing. So I mean, next thing you know, I'm listening to all of it and trying to figure out stuff I like, which stuff I could never in a million years. Hank Garland just blows my mind how precise and well crafted all that stuff is. And but then I'm listening to I'm just listening to Clapton, and then I'm discovering who Howlin' Wolf is through Zeppelin and Clapton and Jeff Beck group. Like, you shook me. Who wrote that? I'm like, Chester. It's like, you're looking at, like, who is Willie Dixon? Who is Chester Burnett? And then all of a sudden, you're listening to the original blues. And so my whole life is a combination of all that music and Eric Johnson, all in one. I got into, I never really fully immersed myself because I was a child of the 80s into the kind of flashier stuff that would come out. But Eric Johnson was the perfect mix for me. It was like,
he was here with Steve Warner a couple of weeks ago.
You're like, man, I never heard anything that put together, that well put together.
Do you, and this may be a stupid question, but I mean, do you just play by ear, or do you know the scales? Do you know all the...
I know the scales enough to get in trouble. I do, I know, I play a lot by ear because I kind of feel it, but I learned every key, every version of every scale that I know in every fret. So you can play up and down because you find yourself, oh, I'm in the 11th fret and I'm in E. Well, where am I? Like you can move up a half a step, but you can play around things, and it's good to have that knowledge of the fretboard so it's not intimidating. So it's like, oh, I don't go up there because it gets scary. Well, no, it's just an octave, and you want to find your routes and playing the same phrase on different strings. Classic example, Hideaway. If you listen to Freddie King, he's playing it off the open. If you listen to Blues Breakers, it's on a wound string, and it's like we start hearing those subtle differences. Then you go, okay, well, he learned it here. Freddie played it here. There was no YouTube. There was no lesson guide. Just like you just dropped the needle and pushed it back. Dropped the needle, pushed it back, and sometimes you'd weigh it down or slow the thing up, and and it was a good way to learn. It was a good way to learn because you learned to interpret and you learned to hear it.
But all the blues greats didn't. I don't think that they really knew the scales. Actually, I think didn't they all of them pretty much play by ear? I mean,
yeah,
including BB and.
Well, what blew my mind. I was talking to my friend and we were talking about Albert King and I'm not sure if this is a known fact or a rumor, but it made sense to me that Albert tuned to open E minor, because if you look at his hand placement, how he got those riffs, it wasn't like he didn't go down a fret to get this thing, to get that phrase. He would just move his finger up. And you're like, okay. And like Albert Collins, he was tuned to open F minor with a capo. He made up the patterns based on the tuning. And a lot of it was just, well, this is what I had, and this is what kind of works for me. And also too, and I'm sound hypocritical when I say this, is the notion of back in those days when you chased your own thing. It's like if Albert Collins is doing it, I can't do it. I got to do something else, So they're figuring out these things that kind of set them apart from their other contemporaries, and that was really cool to see too.
One of my favorite concerts, especially that you've done, was Red Rocks,
Mm-hmm.
the Muddy
Wolf, yeah.
When it came on PBS, I taped it and I drove my wife crazy because every night I would listen to it, back it up, let's do it again, and it was kind of like it was a love-hate thing with you. It was like, why did I ever pick up a guitar after hearing you? And then I kind of finally had to realize that I like riding a bicycle, but I'm not Lance Armstrong either.
Yeah.
I got my own personal enjoyment out of riding around the block, but when you just have to realize, as Clint Eastwood said, what your limitations are. But I'm just still like I was listening to
Royal Albert Hall.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
today I think,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just blown away. I was like, how did that? You're playing a Flying V. What was that? Was that it?
Yeah, I was playing a reissue Flying V at the time. That was the one I held up over my head because my parents were there. I was like, "Look, Mom, look what I did."
I don't even know how the human hand can, or how you could possibly. Do you know what notes you're going to, or does it just fly?
No, I mean,
is it like
I,
breathing? Like
one of the things is, and thank you for the kind words. One of the things is when you're up there in the moment, things time compress. It feels a lot slower. Like when you have dead air at a show, it feels like an hour.
Right.
When you look back at the footage of the dead air, it's like it goes by in like a nanosecond.
Yeah.
So when you're playing in big groups of solos and long bars, things are time compressed. So you can kind of weave in and out of these kind of existential moments where you just, okay, I'm here, and like, what do I want to say? And it's like, if you're really in the moment, you could even time compress more than that, because then you can start putting the little subtleties in. If you're really struggling on a night, you're just struggling to hit a mark and not make a mistake, and you feel like everything you do is going to be a mistake. But when you're having a really on night, it feels like something you can control it. Your head, your brain, your heart, your soul are all linked to your left hand and your right hand, and it's all just flowing out of you. Red Rocks being a good example. I always say that's the best gig I've ever done.
I can't argue with that because I love it.
And I don't know why. It just was the first. It was the first time we've played Red Rocks 9 times now, but it was the first time I played there. The crowd was into it. The weather was perfect because it's not always perfect up there. Our set list was good. We had a killer band. Kirk Fletcher was in the band, and Anton, Reese, Michael, Lee, Paulie, Ron Jubla, Michael Rhodes. And we were a nice unit. And it was a short tour. It was 3 shows. We did just a little specialty thing, and we filmed Red Rocks. And I just remember when it went down, I'm like, I have a good one going here. Don't blow it, because you realize about an hour in, you go, I think I got a good one going here. Especially when the cameras are on. It's like, don't blow it. And that was a big one. The Albert Hall in 2009 when Mr. Clapton came out. Honestly, I was terrified. You could see in the first hand playing slide, and you could just see my hand going like this. I mean, that was just, I knew it was all on the line. I knew if it was great, it was the beginning of the beginning, possibly. And I knew if I crashed and burned, it was the beginning of the end, and a broken watch is right twice a day. So he made it to the Albert Hall one time, and then never heard from him again. That was it. That's what I knew.
Well, that was going to be my next question was, what did it, I mean, how did, you just said it was, how did it feel to be standing on stage with Eric Clapton? I mean,
it was insane. I mean, I go, look what I pulled off,
How did that happen? I mean, did y'all contact him? Did he contact you? Was it an easy deal? Or
I met him at a private event, and I was shocked to find out that he knew who I was. Because I don't assume everybody. I don't assume anybody knows who I am. I'm usually right. And I was just shocked that he knew what and he'd asked me at this private party about the baffle, the shields I use in front of the amps. And I was like, oh my God, not only does he know who I am, he's actually watched me, which is it's a really strange thing. And we had a nice conversation, and a mutual friend of ours, he's like, you should invite Eric Clapton to the Royal Albert Hall. I'm like, yeah. While we're doing that, I'm gonna put Clooney in the front row. De Niro will be over here. BB King will be. He'll be in a box up there. I'm Joe Bonamassa. Nobody's coming. He goes, write him a letter. I'll get him the letter. I hand wrote him a letter. And I said, Mr. Clapton, the reason why I've wanted to play the Royal Albert Hall is because of your legacy in this place, And if he had played all those legendary gigs at, the Fox and Hound pub in London, I would have wanted to play the Fox and Hound.
Right.
Had nothing to do with the beauty and grandness of this hall. It's just because of, and those classic things that he would do in the 80s with 24 Nights and Cream, and then you get the Zeppelin, obviously, and the Beatles. I mean, everybody's played that. But it was, in particular, Eric Clapton that made an impact in my life. So I wrote him a letter and just articulated that. Killed a few trees because I crumpled it up, but I hand wrote the letter. And I left my email. And then one day, it was on a random Sunday, I get one email, which I thought was spam. And it just said Albert. I was like, what's that? And I clicked on it. And I'm like, oh crap, I know who this is. And he said, yeah, as long as the vehicle is simple and, like, don't call giant steps, basically. And so I started thinking, well, he's asked me to choose a song. And I thought of Further On Up the Road because it was the first electric blues song that I ever learned. And it was his version. And I said, well, that would be just surreal. And he goes, do you want to do the Bobby Bland version or my version? I go, no, your version, sir. So it's like, and that was it. And he showed up, and this is the one thing about the gear that I'll always tell people. He showed up. He had a brand new custom shop Strat. It was an Eric Clapton model.
Right.
Blue, Daphne blue. And he had a brand new 57 reissue tweed twin. Still had the little card on top with the sample settings and a monster cable into the amp, into the guitar. Sounded like Eric Clapton. Sounded like the Blues Breakers. I said, that's talent. And then he sings. And it's like every note's in tune. And he plays. And every phrase is in the right place. You go, that's a gift. And, and I could never repay the debt of gratitude that I owe him, because it really, especially in this country, put a stamp of approval on me. And I then became known, especially in the United States, as British. People didn't realize until they actually met me or talked to me or heard me speak that I was from upstate New York. And it really, my whole life changed after that moment. And it was really something very cool that it could never recreate, because you could see the look on my face. You could see the look of how much it meant to me, and he knew it. He absolutely knew it.
I think that everybody, especially with the baby boomers, if you play guitar, that's who you kind of wanted to be. I mean, then of course Hendrix came along, and
right,
and it was kind of a yin and yang there for a while. But
yeah, I mean, well, the thing was, and I know we live in a time where everything is discussed ad nauseum, and accusations are made of who's authentic and who's not. I didn't know who Hubert Sumlin was until I realized that Killin' Floor by Jimi Hendrix was, those guys were our conduits, our hosts for this music that was hiding in plain sight. And, to me, it's like I was introduced to Robert Johnson through Eric Clapton. I was introduced to all of the great blues artists, B.B. King in some respects, through the British. And it doesn't make me less in love with the music. It's just how you get there, and it's the journey from point A to point B.
Yeah. And that was what I was about to ask you too. Is Robert Johnson was Eric Clapton's hero.
Right.
And I was reading where you were voted as top guitar players. I think he was number 6 maybe, and you're number 5. How does that make you feel?
Honestly, I got to tell my mother to stop stuffing the ballot box. Enough, Mom, please. This is the thing about polls, and this is the thing about opinions. Is to be honest with you, it's all subjective. Now, I'm a polarizing figure in the guitar business. I understand that. I'm very aware of that. It doesn't change what I do because somebody likes it. And
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I think a lot of it's the marketing. I think I think some of it is just judging a book by its cover. I mean, I'm up there, I'm up there on stage dressed like a stunt double from the Matrix movie. Okay, who does he think he is? Well, like, what's up with the dark glasses? Well, I'm light sensitive. Like, if you shine a spotlight in my face, I tear up. I can't deal with the spotlight. That's why I started wearing the sunglasses. Because early in my career, you're like, well, he didn't wear them early in the career. I didn't have a spotlight. Okay, we were playing clubs. We were lucky to have 4 par cans.
Right.
Okay, and some green gels. That ran at about 8,000 degrees.
Right.
As soon as we started playing venues, it was a spotlight. I'm like, oh my god, this is bad. But at least on my eyes. And I think a lot of it has to do with it's, I guess I'm slightly misunderstood. I'm slightly socially awkward, and I'm very opinionated, like everybody is. But, I went through a media training course, and I was like, well, I can be just vanilla and a puppy dog my whole life, or I can just be honest. And if being honest is, means being polarizing, then I would choose being honest, 100% of the time. You don't have to agree with it. It's just one person's opinion. Just like you have an opinion about me, I have an opinion about something else. And I could have an opinion about you. It doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, we're not in a business that has to adhere to these guidelines. We're in the people-pleasing business. If somebody likes it, more power to you.
Well, I think you got that in spades, and I'd much rather be real than, as they used to say in the '60s, plastic.
Yeah, and it's, I just have a way of saying things sometimes in a very dry sense of humor that the humor goes over people's heads and they think I'm serious. I'm like, I don't know. And it's not a conscious decision. I don't wake up in the morning and let me say something that's going to get people riled up. I just say what's on my mind sometimes. And I come from a time when it was a lot more, you had to really play to be noticed because there was no YouTube, there was no Instagram,
Right.
there was no Twitter and social media outlets that you can, do. I'm not slighting anybody who does it, but if I see something impressive on Instagram, my first my first reaction is like, how many takes was that?
Yeah.
As opposed to going, you're live,
Right.
the red light's on,
Right.
and there's no right or wrong. I'm just saying that's where my mind goes, and and it's also, okay, can you do it in your your studio or your bedroom? Can you do it with other musicians? Are you listening to what everybody else is playing? So I was brought up. I was one of the last generations to be brought up in a non-social media, time, which I'm glad I did. I feel sorry for people who well, I was a guest on my show. He played the Star Spangled Banner on guitar in front of the AFC Championship game with the Kansas City Chiefs. And I said, what were you most nervous about? And he goes, becoming a meme. And I laughed at first, and I started thinking, like, oh my God, that's so sad. And he's like 18 or 19 years old, and great player, great musician with a hugely bright future. But in his back of his mind, going, don't screw this up, because some idiot will make a meme out of me.
Yeah.
And try to I don't know, sour my good name throughout the interwebs. You're like, that is so effed up. It's beyond my comprehension, because everybody clams hard. Everybody sticks the landing and go, oh my God, look at me. They did it to Joe Jonas too at the Grammys. Listen, You got no sound check. Okay. It's not his fault. Everybody clams. But no, of course, it's got to spread.
You know, I think the first person that ever happened to was the Bee Gees.
Mm-hmm.
They got this one DJ. They were at the pinnacle. Only the Beatles maybe were higher.
Right.
And maybe okay, disco. You know, you can have your preferences of music and everything. I thought the Bee Gees music was awesome. I thought their writing was off the chart. Their singing was incredible.
Incredible.
And overnight, one guy slammed them, and the whole career was over with. And we'll be right back after this.